the Debt Management Office has revealed that Nigeria's total debt stock has increased to about 49.85 trillion naira as of March 2023. This figure represents an increase of about 3.60 trillion naira compared to 46.25 trillion naira recorded at the end of December 2022. These growing figures have continuously threatened the economic growth of the country, given rise to inflation and caused untold hardship on her citizens. Although the Director General of the Debt Management Office, Ms. Patience Oniha, attributed the debt to a combination of factors, including borrowings and the continued issuing of promissory notes by the federal government, Nigerians are still concerned as to why there seems to be an increase every quarter. Joining us in the studio is a financial expert, Olusegun Okwande. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning, Vero. Good morning, Kemi. Baraka de Salah to all our viewers this morning.
And you as well. Now, let's even begin by asking the question, because some of the reasons given is the issuing of promissory notes and all of that. Is it possible for the government to run without issuing these promissory notes or without even borrowing at all in the first place?
Yeah, it's really not possible. Debt is one of the area of financing project and certain things. So you talk from two perspectives, either by equity financing or the other aspect, which is borrowing. But the challenge we are faced with, why we keep having increase in this borrowing, it's because there is no proper management of the funds that are being borrowed in such a way that you can have the repayment as at when due. Sure, you know, when you talk about debt, there is interest factor. You have your principal against your interest and the term at which you need to do it. So when you don't pay as at when due, what you'll be doing is accumulating more interest that will definitely increase your debt burden as a country. Don't forget that before you carry out any borrowing, there is what you call feasibility report to the people that you want to borrow from. That gives them the comfort zone that you're able to repay back the loan. But what we've observed is that when some of these loans are borrowed, because there is no proper monitoring, the corruption epidemic that we have in the system makes some of these funds to be diverted. And when they are not even used judiciously, some of the things you see is that the project that those things are meant for, that are supposed to recoup back, you know, returns for you to repay back those things are not. I'll give you a practical example. I know that, you know, the infrastructure that the last administration counted us as one of their gain, which is Abuja-Kaduna rail system, was funded by, you know, debt financing. Ask yourself, how much revenue have we been able to recoup? Correct. You know, to pay back that particular thing. You discover that because of the level of insecurity, people have not been patronizing it. So if that debt liability falls short as at a particular time, for you to do something, that means you might be getting that funds from another place to block that particular area. So you discover that certain things needs to be put in place. If at all, we must salvage the situation where we are. Otherwise, you discover that there will be increase every quarterly. But when you are unable to fulfill the challenge we've been faced with is that most of the time we take care of the interest and still leave the principal. So when you take care of the interest and you leave the principal, the money is still lying. So you have to extend or do what we call debt restructuring for you to be able to meet up some of these things. So I think the area of focus that some of us have been saying is that borrowing is not a bad idea. In fact, debt financing is one of the cheapest way to get things done because you are making use of people's funds to carry it out. But situation you are not monitoring judiciously to make sure that you have return on it to repay back your debt, it becomes a burden that you will not be able to take care of on the long run. And that's what we are faced with critically. But for me, I seem to be having a little comfort. And people will say, why? The current president, our president is a financial person. He understands the dynamics. So even if he has someone at the end of affair that is going to monitor things, you know, there is one thing for me to be talking to you and you are just believing in my expertise. And there is one thing that you know that I know certain things to be carried out. So there will always be different. So we expect that in the next few months, as we're launching into this administration, we'll discover that we might have things straightened out. But as we are, the challenges we are faced with, we might still have some of these debt because we are struggling. If you see our GDP to debt ratio is far from 8 compared to other climes. It's because there is no proper monitoring of some of the reason for this borrowing. And even when you carry out those infrastructure, how much monitoring are you providing on it to make sure that you are able to recoup the revenue to repay back some of those things? And if you look at on the long run, an aspect that we have actually been emphasizing on, our cost of governance. Our cost of governance, it's an area that needs to be addressed. And picking corruption, nipping it at the bud in such a way that majority of the funds you see in the hands of individuals that are meant for the development of the nation can be used to take care of certain things that has to do with our debt currently.
All right. So observers have so far commended President Buhari for being in the right track in terms of, what he's done since his inauguration, removal of fuel subsidy.
Tinubu.
Apologies. President Tinubu, I actually meant to say.
Yeah.
So observers have already commended him for the steps he's taken so far. But you spoke earlier about, things that need to be done, things that need to be put in place. Let's just even look at the bad case, the worst case scenario, as Mr. Neha has said now. What would happen if Nigeria cannot, fulfill its debt obligations? What would happen?
It's a very deep one, I must say. It's a threat to our sovereignty. That must be said. It's a threat. So the creditors go after you and look at all means of recouping back their funds because they are not charitable organization. And I don't think we'll stoop to that level where it will be very difficult for us to repay back some of those things. You have heard the new administration talked about, sales of assets in order to see how they augment payment of some of this debt. We have a lot of assets that are lying fallow. A lot of money was actually used to actually bring in investment. But when you don't monitor it and at the middle of it, somebody just say like, well, we've done our own, let's take our fair share of it and move on. And nobody is asking questions. Those are the things you definitely observe. Some of the assets that are not being put in use, ask yourself, where did you get the money for some of these things? It's where the borrowing that we had. So the government coming up now to look and put searchlights into some of the assets, into some of the things. You see, when people like us from the finance aspect talked of internal control, is to put check and balances to some of the things we are doing. And you are not at liberty to just do what you want. An accountant will work and prepare all the books. Somebody is out there to come and cross-check the activity and ask questions. How many people are asking questions in the area of our spending? One thing you should ask yourself, if you say your revenue is declining, as a financial expert, what will you try to do is to control your expenditure. Even if you are not, I'm sure at home, if they decide to slash your salary as we speak, are you still going to be offering this kind of enjoyment you're doing? You definitely reduce it. And that's what we're saying. If, as we speak, our revenue is being threatened, the first area you need to look into is cost of governance. How do we remove the humongous fleets of vehicles, the number of aides that we have attached to the politicians? How do you remove and minimize them in such a way that you are able to use that money to make productive arm? Another aspect where we have this problem is that, you see, the unification of foreign exchange is a good policy. But it's going to haunt us back. Why? We are not productive in nature. Everything we do to the pen that Vero is holding is being imported. And what that does is that everybody goes back to the ironing window to see how to source fund to get those things. And that's why we are put before the current president. How do we start producing some of the things that we have? We have the raw materials. We are at advantage with the cost of labor, because the labor here is cheap. Our population is actually in our favor, just like we have in Asia. The Chinese capitalized on their population and attract people to come and set up industry. How can we start having industry being built up in such a way that some of the things that we are importing, we can start producing it here? When you produce it here, what you have done is that you have deferred the area of you saying, go and source for foreign exchange to bring those things in. And I think the area this administration must start from is the PMX. We have the raw materials, which is the crude oil. In as much as we are waiting for Dangote to start his own, how can we fix the other refinery? Because we are still importing fuel, it's still putting pressure. Imagine when we produce those things locally, the pressure of the foreign exchange we use in bringing those things. Marketers are already yearning that there is insufficient foreign exchange in market, are already anticipating that we should prepare for increase in the price of PMX that has just been improved. But you don't blame them. When demand outweighs supply, what you see is the increase in price of some of those things. So government should look at how can we be productive. The majority of the basic things, let's go to the southeast. The materials we are all wearing, we have the raw material. If you see a good shirt sold by these people, you definitely give value. But what do we see? People want the imported version of it. And when you import everything, all you are doing is you are putting so much pressure on your foreign exchange, which will not contribute anything on the bottom line for you as a nation. So this government must be intentional on creating a conducive environment for businesses to grow in such a way that individuals can start bringing out. Where are those days where we have so many manufacturing companies? When you talk of tire, talk of battery,
In fact,
talk
some
of
them
automobiles.
are saying that they are looking at leaving the country.
Because the environment is not conducive
conducive
for them.
That's for those who are still here.
For those who are still here,
The
some have gone.
the cost of operation, I must tell you, for an average business owner these days, is becoming unbearable. So if you cannot survive, the next thing is to look for where you can get those operations cheaper. And you know, even when they move it outside the shore of this country, the implication of it is when you are bringing it, you need foreign exchange to get those things back. It's not going to be at Naira. So when you put so much pressure on your foreign exchange by practically importing everything that you have to do, there is no how you'll be able to concentrate on how to manage those debts. So you just be borrowing more. As we're talking, CBN is already considering seeing how they can pump in more foreign exchange to salvage the situation where we are currently. But if you pump it in, and all we are using that funds to do is to bring in other products, and it's not for us to domesticate some of the things we have. You have not gone anywhere. So, and that's why we are like, this administration must be intentional. I'm an advocate that says government should not get involved in doing business. Leave it in the hand of people that understand, you know, doing this business. All you need to do is create the enabling environment. Do you know the implication of this? If businesses succeed in Nigeria, you'll be willing to pay your tax. Corporate tax for organization, individuals will be willing to. But what do you see individuals doing? You are willing to shortchange the government by not paying your tax. Except for those of us that compulsorily, they will deduct your payee. But if you are an individual that is self-reporting, part of the things you do is that you look for a way to shortchange the government by not paying the tax. Why? You provide your electricity yourself, you provide the road, you provide the water, and you say that's enough tax for me to pay. In fact, I'm paying more with some of those infrastructure that I have to provide. So if government is able to do what is needful, it will assist in the growth, and businesses will succeed. They will be able to recoup more and more revenue, at least to augment what we have.
Now, you've mentioned something that is of concern to me, which has to do with the discipline of our repayment and structure as it is right now, because whatever it is, we have to pay.
Of course.
And then if government is saying that it has to sell some assets, how do we insulate that sale from corruption as we know it? Because that's also the concern for majority of Nigerians. So when we're talking about discipline, structure for repayment, what is it? What should it look like? And if we are to insulate whatever means we are trying to use to cushion the effect and look at how to generate funds, how do we insulate it from corruption?
Yeah, sincerely speaking, Vero, is a difficult mechanism when you want to insulate because of the level at which corruption has actually gained its ground across board. It's not only when you take out of the government funds that you talked about corruption. Even when you circumvent, processes to your gain, on its own too, it's corruption. And a lot of that is what we are having. Do you know, I tell individual, you just finished with the the call marshal for Lagos. When you go against one way, it's corruption. Because what you are trying to do is to circumvent the process, see how you can make fast gain for yourself. While other people who are in traffic, you would have run like 2 shifts, somebody is doing 1. That's corruption on its own. And that's why we feel that we must take it down to the grassroots and see how we can nip it at the bud. It's not an atmosphere where Vero is my sister. Because she's my sister, whatever she's doing now is right. I cannot query it. But if it is Kemi, because I don't know her, I have to raise and blow the trumpet because it's not affecting me. It is high time we must devote ourselves from those attitudes and report all that is reportable. I have been putting in line to say, this current administration, you've removed the subsidy, we know. And my president happens to be a good accountant while he was in the private sector. There's what we call management account on monthly basis. Can we start having a track record? Right from June 1st till now, subsidy has been removed. This is what we've been able to receive. This is what we've expended. This is the gain, the savings we've been able to have because we removed subsidy. This so much amount, are we going to use it to repay back our debt? Are we going to invest it on infrastructure? When people see that transparency, it gives them that confidence to want to do more. That's where we must start from. The government on its own must be willing. When people see the willingness that things are being corrected right from the head, individuals will start checking their pace. When the new administration came in, we saw the level at which they are sacking. You call this to order, replace this. And it sent a signal. The individual will tell you the slogan in town will be, don't leave your charger in the office. The president do not make announcement during the day because you might leave by 5 p.m. and by 8, there is declaration. So you won't have access to that charger.
Come back.
It's a signal to tell you that we are actually working. Can we get that to the root of it in such a way that where we see things going wrong, we have a mechanism to report this. We have a whistleblowing act that protect people. How much have we been able to use reporting some of these
successes,
and also reporting it and protecting the people that I have not seen average time where you see that a particular infringement is being reported and that person is being protected and rewarded for reporting that particular thing. I have not heard that being said. So people are not even encouraged to report. Rather, they are scared. Because if you go ahead and whistleblow, even in the right perspective, because the other party that you are blowing the whistle against has the resources to fight you, what do? You just keep your mouth shut. But this is an atmosphere where we must put system in place for reporting some of these things. You see, Nigeria is blessed. If you look at the resources in the hand of an average politician, if that is invested back into productivity for this nation, I'm telling you, it will be a place to be. But what have we been saying? Majority of our leaders, majority of our politicians would rather invest their finance outside the country to be bringing them back again to kind of oppress individuals. It doesn't work. We must be intentional in growing the economy in a productive manner. I can tell you, debt is not an issue. Debt is not a problem to me. But if you put in the necessary mechanism in such a way that you are productive, when you are productive, there will be growth. Everybody get it. You see, not until when you start something. If you wake up and say you want to start making, clothes as a fashion designer, you can only know the first step. As you grow in the business, creativity comes.
Yeah.
And you grow the business on your own. But if you are not starting, you may not even know the length at which you can go. Yeah. Because average Nigerians are creative. Look at majority of the artisans that we see on the road riding bike.
Where are they supposed to be? These are people that are supposed to be doing majority of the artisan work that we no longer get people to do for us, because there is failure in the aspect of power. A welder needs power to work. If he doesn't have the power, he needs to go and get a generating set. How can he afford to get petrol inside that generating set and pass the cost to you? Will you be able to bear it? If somebody is telling you to come and make a gate of 100,000 and you feel that, what is it that I need the gate for? Leave the door open, let it be. You are actually shortchanging that man. The creativity in him, you are killing it. That's why the government must be intentional about making the business environment more conducive. We understand some of these policies are to straighten things, but we need the accountability, the transparency to see through in such a way that we have the confidence that growth is on our path.
The DMO has already said that Nigeria, at least 73% of the current budget is going to be utilized on servicing debts alone, and has warned that we are even nearing the debt ceiling. I don't know what you would advise, to the president now regarding the need to borrow more, because you've already laid a basis for, borrowing is legitimate, but for the right cause and under the right process. But with the enormous obligations on the Nigerian government at this time now, is this something that you would subscribe to?
Do we need to borrow more?
Well, for now, I'm not an advocate that we should borrow more, because there is no plan of offsetting the current debt that we have. If you have 70, in fact, you're saying 73%, I'm sure based on their statistics, some of us know that it's far much more than that. So if 73% of your income goes, or your revenue goes on debt servicing, how much are you generating from the infrastructure that you have actually used the money borrowed to salvage? So you discover that if you are not getting more revenue, we started from 20% to 30%, till we get to this 77, 73 that you just mentioned by the DMO DG. If we are unable to salvage the situation, come another quarter, you'll be talking that it has increased from 73 to about 80%. And that's why the government must be intentional in fixing those things. Fine, we understand that the new policy is to make things easier. But how are we going to see the benefit of it? How transparent can we be for people to have that confidence that this thing is for their good? It's for so many people are attacking us. They say, okay, you are part of the people that said they should remove subsidy. They've removed it now. You are part of the people that said they should have a unified. Yes, but the only way people can have that trust and confidence is when we start saying transparency and put figures in the paper in such a way that people can have understanding. The GMD of NNPC came up to say that since the removal of subsidy, consumption has reduced drastically. That is just a mere word. Give us figure. We are yet to understand what is our consumption on daily basis. So we must bring those facts on the table, let people reason alongside with you, and with that we can start salvaging the situation as a nation.
Right. We have to leave this conversation here now. The task ahead of the government is an enormous one, and we believe that the government will be able to tackle it head on. Thank you, financial expert Olusegun Okwadi, for your time on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Baraka de Sala.
Same to you.